Hey, welcome back to Wheels and Things. Today I'm in the office because we're going to look at some papers. All these papers came in the glove box of my used Fiat 500 Abarth. Going to go through them, see what they're all about, see if we can figure out what maintenance has been done and when, so we can figure out what likely needs to be done on it, and what things can wait, I guess, or have already been done. So let's just dive right into it. First thing I got out of the glove box is a State of Washington registration. It's got the previous owner's information on it. I won't share that. I won't point it at the camera. So actually, pretty much all these things do. So it was registered in the state of Washington in May 2013. And basically all the papers on it since then have the owner's name on it. So there may have been one owner before this owner. I don't recall. I think I saw the Carfax at one point, but I don't have a copy of it right now. But anyway, so at least from 2013, this guy owned it and he lived in Washington. So that's the first thing we know about it. Next thing we get to is at 9,800 miles. So this guy owned it starting at 9,000 miles. So if there was another owner, they didn't own it for very long. But didn't go to the dealer, but got an oil change and a car wash. Cool. 9,800 miles. And that was in 2013. Then he got some tire rotation. And it was free. Went to Les Schwab, did a free tire rotation for him at 9,801 miles. Literally drove 1 mile down the road, same day. Oil change, tire rotation. All right, good maintenance, thanks. The next thing we got is, this looks like 13,000 miles. Got another oil change at a Jiffy Lube. Nothing else, just oil change. So I've got some oil change records. Then the next thing we have is, doesn't have a mileage on it because it's a Napa Auto Parts receipt, but bought oil and an oil filter. So maybe did the oil change himself later in 2013. So this guy was October 2013. This guy's November 2013. So must have been putting a lot of miles on it, which I guess would explain maybe why it has so many miles on it. I mean, putting like, what would that be, like 5,000 to 7,000 a month, depending on oil change intervals. Or maybe just bought them to have them on hand at that point. We don't know exactly when he changed it. Next thing we got is, brake discs and pads were done at 71,000 miles. So that's still 90,000 miles ago. So that's something that I'll probably want to look at, but honestly, the brakes don't squeak, so at least there may not be any pad wear indicators on it, but if there are, they're not squeaking yet, and the pedal feels firm. So right now, I'm not too concerned about it, but when I dig into it deeper, that'll be one thing we'll look at. But hey, at least they were done once. It's not on the original pads and rotors, so that's good. Cost them $373 to do the pads and rotors. Next thing we got, this is a packet from Les Schwab, 112,000 miles, bought 4 new tires. So interesting thing about the 500 Abarth is that there were a couple wheel and tire options. The first one was a 16-inch wheel, which from the factory came with 195 45 R16 tires. The other option was a 17-inch wheel, which came with, I'm going to get this wrong, but it came with 205 width tires. I think it was 205 40 R17 is what's coming off the top of my head. I can, might have to look that up. But anyway, long story short, when you do the math and you work it out, you find out that the tire that came on the 16-inch wheel was much smaller in diameter than the tire that came on the 17-inch wheel, which is really interesting. And interestingly enough, the speedometer, according to folks on the internet, is really set up to be accurate when you have the 17-inch wheel and tire package. So the standard tire size for the wheels, I have the 16-inch wheels. So the standard tire size that when you go to a tire shop and you look it up, it's going to tell you you need 195/45 R16s. However, you can get 205/45 R16s, and those are still smaller than the tires that came on the 17-inch wheels, and yet they're wider and taller than the 195s. So at 112,000 miles, he put 205/45 R16s on there, a set of Federal SS 595s, black walls, for a total cost of $560. It's not, I mean, that's a decent tire. I actually don't know a lot about the Federals, but it's not the cheapest tire that you can get. Another thing that's interesting is that buying the 205/45 R16 size is a lot more common than the 195. The 195 has a lot less options, and even if you could get the tire in both sizes, the 195 size is almost always more expensive by a significant amount. A specific example is, well, first of all, this Federal tire is, I think, $125 if you buy the 195 size, and only $100 if you buy per tire if you buy the 205 size. And the same with the Nexen Infera SU1. That's a tire that I've run on previous cars that I had. I really like that tire, actually. It's a budget tire, but I've really enjoyed it. But anyway, that tire is $100 for the 195 size, which is smaller, and only $80 per tire for the 205/45 R16 size. So I find that really interesting, that the bigger tire is actually cheaper just because it's more common, and you can get a lot more tires in that size, a lot more variety of tires. So anyway, he put 205/45 R16s on there for a total of $567. So these are not the tires that are currently on it, and I know that because, well, first of all, the rear tires are not this size, and second of all, the tires, there's whoever put the tires on the car last, on the back there's 195 45 R16s, and those are the Federal SS 595s. On the front there's some off-brand that I have not heard of, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but those are 205/45 R16. So right now it's got bigger tires on the front and smaller tires on the rear, which not only looks silly, but it's just kind of obnoxious that someone would do that, but that's what you get for a $5,000 car. Then we get another vehicle registration issued in 2017. Same person owned it, and at that point, in Washington, they weigh it, or at least they put a weight on here of 2,434 pounds. So pretty light car. Explains why it's still fun with only 160 horsepower. Yeah, issued in 2017. Does it have a mileage? I'm not seeing a mileage at this point. I would have thought that would have been something that they had to include. But this is also a vehicle registration certificate, but it doesn't have a lot of, it's more like a receipt. Anyway, so that was renewed in 2017, and the most recent thing I have, this is actually really helpful, 156,000 miles, which is only 8,000 miles ago, less than 8,000 miles ago. It had two, again, 195/45 R16 SS 595s put on the rear. I actually don't know if they were put on the rear at that point, but these, I'm very confident that these are the tires that are currently on the rear wheels. So I don't really understand why, if this person hadn't known anything about cars, they would have gotten the 195 tires, because that's what the tire shop would have told them to put on. But obviously previously, and I guess those tires probably lasted from 112,000 miles to 150,000 miles, 156,000 miles. So almost 45,000 miles on the tires. That's not too bad, if I'm doing the math in my head correctly. But then this time they put on two of the smaller size. So I don't know if there are already two of the smaller size that I don't have a receipt for, or why that happened, if they got flat tires and that's all they had in stock. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me that this person, it's the same person that's got their name on here. So put 205s on originally and then went back to 195s, but only put 2 of them on. And 2 tires cost $322. So what's probably going to happen is either I'm going to have to replace all 4 tires with a new set, which is tempting because some of the less expensive tires, which I'm totally okay with, on an inexpensive car, it's not like I'm going to be tracking it or anything, like the Nexen and Farah's. It's still going to be like it's going to be like $450 to put on a set of those, whereas to put on 2 of these 195s, I assume will also be around $322. We don't have sales tax in Oregon, so that might knock off $26. So it'd be about $300 to put 2 tires on, but for $450, I can get 4 tires that are all new and they all match, and I can get them in the 205 size. And the reason I would want the 205 size is 1, speedometer is more accurate. 2, you get better shock absorption over bumps because you got more rubber. And 3, you get a wider tire, so in theory you would get slightly better grip. The only question I have left is if I got 4 tires, would I go for a high performance all season? Since I do live in the Pacific Northwest, it's not yet summer, it's going to rain. Or do I just get a summer tire? I'm not going to drive this car in the snow. I will be driving it in the rain, but I won't be driving it in the snow, or if it gets super cold, I won't drive it because that summer compound's just not going to handle well. But so some things to think about. Let me know what you think. You think I should go with an inexpensive summer tire that I could, totally use in the shoulder season? I'm not going to get I'm going to get one with rain that can handle rain. I'm not going to get an autocross tire that's basically no siping, but the Infera SU1 is the one I'm looking at, and it can handle rain, but it doesn't handle cold very well, which is the other thing. In the Pacific Northwest, we get cold mornings and evenings, so something to consider, especially in the spring and fall. We can have mornings below freezing, but then middle of the day it's 60, 70 degrees. So yeah, some things to think about on the tire front. So after going through all those papers, the things we don't have in there are, changing the serpentine belt, changing spark plugs. It's possible that brakes and pads could be due again. And the big one is timing belt. There's no record of a timing belt service. I don't remember exactly what the manufacturer recommended was. I believe it's either 140 or 150,000 miles. I know that the general consensus on the internet is if you drive hard, you might even want to change it twice by 150,000 miles. So once at 70, 75, and again, I'm at 162. So either way, I need a timing belt. And I went and got a quote for a timing belt from a local shop here. And that's actually a total another story, which actually I'll tell it real quick. So it is 2021. I call up, a shop that I have a friend uses. They work on his Mini. I call them up and I start telling them what I need, and they say, whoa, I'm going to stop you right there. We don't work on Fiats. I was like, okay, fair enough. They're kind of a niche car in the U.S. I said, okay, who do you know who might do that? They said, oh, this shop, it's called, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it had Euro in the name. So I'm thinking, okay, I understand, Euro shops, specialty tools. I understand, even though it is a Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge product, it's still different enough in some ways that it's, considered a Euro car, I guess. So I call up the Euro shop. Oh, no, we don't work on Fiats. Okay, they said, try these other people. So 4 shops I try, we don't work on Fiats. And that was actually pretty surprising to me. I honestly thought that anyone who worked on Mopar would work on, Mopar, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge would work on Fiat, but that is not the case. I didn't try the dealership that I assume used to be the Fiat dealership, the current Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge dealership in town, because I don't know. especially with old cheap cars. I just feel like they are not the best deal, and especially since it's no longer produced, may not have techs that are even trained on it anymore. It's not something they're getting recurrent training on or anything, and may or may not have the tools to do it anymore. So basically, Fiat's a defunct brand now, so you got to consider that when you're looking at them. But finally, I get on the phone with this guy, and he definitely sounds European. So I had a good feeling, and he's like, "Yep, I work on Fiats. Just finished one. Got one in the shop right now." So I asked him to give me a quote for a timing belt and a clutch. He just punched in to his computer and gave me a ballpark number. So $800 for a timing belt, which is actually not as bad as I thought it could be, but like $1,800 for the clutch. And the reason the clutch is so expensive is because you do have to pull apart the AC system. So one downside, as you probably have seen or will see if you watch my oil change video, is that they pack a lot of stuff under the hood of this car. It's definitely not a spacious engine bay by any count. It is everything is crammed in there. It's packaged well, but does not make it easy to work on. So when you do the clutch, you got to pull lots of things apart, and one of the things you got to pull apart is the AC system. So then you have to drain and recharge that. So clutch is not an easy job. The car doesn't need a clutch right now, but it might someday. So I'm keeping that in mind. But yeah, that's like 20% of the value of the car to get a clutch job. So probably only do that if it really, really needs it, and if I really think that it's still going to be worth something at the end of the day. But the timing belt's $800 at a professional shop. But I figured I'm running this channel, I've got this car, may as well go out on a limb and try it myself. I don't have any professional auto training, but as an engineer and somebody who's learned about engines and things, and has enjoyed cars for a while, I figured, hey, it'd be a good adventure to, on this channel, try to change the timing belt myself. So I'm going to be ordering the tools I need and the parts I need, and stay tuned, and we'll try to change a timing belt on a Fiat 500 Abarth coming up pretty soon. So the good news is that the timing belt and water pump, it's also a water pump job, so that adds a whole nother thing to it. Got to drain the coolant and so forth. But the timing belt and water pump parts themselves were only, I think, $135, and I didn't buy the bargain basement parts. I bought what I think is reputable parts, and it's a timing belt. If the timing belt breaks, for those of you not in the know, the timing belt is what keeps the bottom half of the engine, the cylinders and the valves, going at the right time. If it were to break, the valves could be down and the cylinder will come up and smash them, and then your engine's kind of done. So having the timing belt in good condition is very important to the longevity of your engine, and so doing the service is important. Also, if your water pump fails, it's run by the timing belt, so when you replace the timing belt, you just replace the water pump, because you do have to take a lot of stuff apart. It's just one of those things that's always done. If you do have an Accord or a Civic or any of these other cars that have timing belts, same thing. You replace the timing belt, you replace the tensioner, the water pump, all that stuff. So bought the timing belt kit with the water pump and the tensioner, $130 some. But the real expense is all the other tools that I had to buy, and I'll explain all that stuff and list those out. But had to buy a few specific tools. Had to buy a specific timing tool to basically hold the timing in place while I change the belt, so that when I put it back together, the engine runs appropriately and does not grenade itself. So that is one risk of doing a timing belt on your own, is if you mess it up, you ruin the engine. So as far as maintenance goes, again, tires are going to need to be done, timing belt going to need to be done. Things that possibly need to be done, probably spark plugs. Oh, and while I'm doing the timing belt, the serpentine belt's $12. So, and I have to take all that stuff, I have to take it off anyway. So it's kind of one of those things, if it's a cheap part and you're going to take it off, just buy a new one and put that back on when you're done. So that's another thing I'm going to replace. But spark plugs, ignition coils, those are some things that seem to be working fine right now. Probably are scheduled for replacement, but brakes, pads, rotors, I'll have to look at those, see how they're doing. Oh, under very hard acceleration, I do get a slight vibration from the front left. My guess is that's the CV shaft, but 99% of the time it's not an issue. So we'll kind of, when we get under the car, we'll look and see if there's any smoking guns down there, or there's anything obviously going bad. But other than that, I'm just going to leave things as it is. It's a $5,000 car. That's kind of the maintenance outlook going forward for the Fiat 500 Abarth. And yeah, we'll get to fixing stuff here soon. So thanks for tuning in. Have a good day.